Shit. Sorry guys, sorry. People are going to miss a lot. Quite some commitments that I need to attend to. So I didn't do it live. Na 7 o'clock. Ndanga kumirira mukoma maswera ndaswera zviri kufamba already. And let me do this live. Let's start at 7 o'clock. Before I've got loads of things that needs to be done today. So, and wrong just an hour from 7 to 8 or just 2 hours. 7, 8, 9. Today, as you know, is 9th of March 2022, which marks exactly 7 years after Dzamara has been abducted and Dzamara's disappearance. So exactly 20, he was abducted on the 9th of March 2015. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 7 times 365 days. So it means Dzamara has been missing for almost 3,000 days. Today marks almost 3,000 days Dzamara has been missing. Oh, sorry. Let's hope this is not COVID again. I don't want COVID. I don't want COVID. I've been suffering from this flu for years. 365 days times 7. 35, 5 carry 3. 42, 45, 5 carry 4, 21, 25. That means 2,555 days Dzamara has been missing, or to the nearest 1,000 we get 3,000. To the nearest 1,000 we get 3,000 days. Dzamara has been missing now for 3,000 days. For 3,000 days Dzamara has been missing for 3,000 days. 3,000 days now. The people of Zimbabwe, are demanding answers. The gentleman, he was abducted as he was coming out of a barber shop where he was having a haircut in Glenview, Harare, on the 9th of March 2015. He was abducted by an unidentified man. Dzamara was a human rights activist who has since October 2014 has been occupying Africa Unity Square in Harare and leading to protests demanding that Robert Gabriel Mugabe steps down for failing to run a country. Dzamara and his co-protesters were assaulted and arrested on several occasions. Since his abduction on that day, his whereabouts were not known. This is, to me, this is a gross violation of his constitutional guaranteed rights. So the abduction is reminiscent of the 2008, where several human rights activists, defenders, and political activists were abducted and murdered by the regime. So a lot of people, they called for the abductors to release Dzamara, or for him to be brought before the courts if he had committed any crime. But those calls were not even heard by anyone. Akoma Yuda Basangari Famba. Thanks, Ngoma Victor member. So this reminds me, ladies and gentlemen, of how Zimbabweans across the globe cried when George Floyd was murdered by a policeman. Many of us, we witnessed George Floyd struggling to gasp for his last breath of air for more than 8 agonizing minutes under the knee of a police officer who took an oath to protect and save George Floyd. Mr. 𝗬𝗫𝗃𝗃, how are you? It remains hard to say what was more painful to watch as George Floyd being stripped of his dignity and humanity as his life was horrifically strangled from him on the smug confidence of a murderer staring into a camera, openly in defiance his willingness to betray the public and weaponize his badge against another completely defenseless human being, while essentially taunting the crowd in their prowessness to stop him. No decent person with any empathy can excuse what they saw in that video. This is something that is cropped up, which came up to me when I think how George Floyd was murdered in America. All Zimbabweans, they were watching whilst an American citizen was being murdered by people who took an oath to save the citizens of America, to say, look, I am going to be a policeman. I am going to save the citizens of America. I am going to respect their rights. As a result, committed citizens of all backgrounds and races, they took to the streets to protest because they had had enough of these killings. And people knew their rights. People watched a fractured nation battled for its soul as people were wrestling with the consequences of America's original skin of slavery. I am looking at such a type of thing where people came up, human rights activists came up with ideas to say Black lives matter. Do Black lives really matter? Black men and women and children. When we say Black lives matter, we mean Black men, women and children, their lives matter. And George Floyd's life matters. Same applies to Zimbabwe. When George Floyd was killed, every Zimbabwean, including the Zimbabwe government, they cried that America's racists had knelt down on George Floyd's neck and broke the neck. The whole world cried when George Floyd died. Because it was not good to unfairly deprive someone's life. Someone has had dreams of what his kids would be like when they grow up. And that time the government was planning to take someone's life. Their memories seemingly reduced to a never-ending stream of hashtags when people thought about George Floyd. That time, George Floyd murder was so blatant in its savagery. An officer was caught on camera, so emboldened. It has galvanized a movement in the hearts of minds of people all over the country and the world, including Zimbabwe. So in standing for George Floyd, people engaged in peaceful protests. Community members and the fellow countrymen, including women, and the global citizens, including 𝗕𝗵𝗿, we all went into the streets and we demanded for justice. We wanted justice to be done. The Zimbabwe government became a global citizen. Zimbabweans became a global citizens. They took onto the streets. They wrote placards. They signed that memorandum of whatever to say Black Lives Matter. George Floyd's life matters. And we became actively involved in condemning racist organizations, racial attacks on blacks. We did quite a lot. We demanded racial equality, that there must be racial equality. People should not be dragged down and stepped on their necks to break the necks, block the air, block the blood, and kill black people on the streets like that. Surprisingly, a similar scenario occurred in Zimbabwe on the 9th of March, which is today. I'm commemorating 7 years since Dzamara went missing. Harare is quiet. The people of Zimbabwe are quiet on the issue. Quite a few things, ladies and gentlemen, seems new since this pro-democracy campaigner Dzamara was abducted from a barber shop on the 9th of March 2015. Zimbabwe had a first dispensation before it moved into a new dispensation. Zimbabwe now has got a new police commissioner who was not a police commissioner during that time when 𝗬𝗁 was police commissioner. So when these men and children, when these men who swore that they will take allegiance to serve the people of Zimbabwe, when they came into power as second dispensation or a new dispensation, they made pledges to conduct an investigation to find out the whereabouts of Dzamara. Yet on March this year, Dzamara would have found things much the same if he was still around with us. The new dispensation, it is a new dispensation of violence. The things that Dzamara was standing against are the same things that we still experience, or we are experiencing worse than what Dzamara experienced during his lifetime. On the day, family and friends, today, we are commemorating 7 years since this abduction of the firebrand activists. The 𝗳𝗲𝗃 is doing nothing. If people go onto the streets to campaign, to try and make some demands, you will find a lot of water cannons, baton sticks, AK assault rifles, dozens of police officers patrolling the Harare streets, especially at Africa Unity Square in Harare, just as they did during Dzamara's the time. Democratic reforms that Dzamara fought and suffered for, that Dzamara cried for, that Dzamara demanded when he occupied Africa Unity Square, have never been changed. We are worse off than we were in old dispensation or first dispensation. The new administration has been promising reforms since taking over the governance of the country on the 17th of November 2017. On November 2017. Mwezi wa mbudzi vakatora masimba vaMnangagwa. Mwezi wa mbudzi vakatora masimba vana Chiwenga. Vakapromisa ma reforms kuti change tichita ma reforms patinosvika ma elections at 2018. But its failure to resolve Dzamara's disappearance and the silence around the issue is so damaging. It is really damaging. This is not only damaging the country, it is also damaging the government's credibility. So far, since that coup, since Mnangagwa came to power, he has done nothing in regard to the investigation of Dzamara. This is why I said today, let me take it upon myself to talk about Dzamara, a gentleman, a human rights activist who went missing on the 9th of March 2015. 7 years down the line, the new dispensation, the new government has never even initiated an investigation into the matter. And this has damaged its credibility. When they came to power, they spoke a lot about these pressing issues. People are now questioning the sincerity to tackle pressing issues on human rights violations. This is why you see Zimbabwe has been discussed today in Parliament in the United Kingdom. Not in the United Kingdom alone, even in America, they were discussing Zimbabwe. That the new dispensation, it made a promise to tackle pressing issues on human rights violations. But we are witnessing worse human rights violations as never been witnessed in our country, Zimbabwe. Mnangagwa himself, people pleaded with Mnangagwa to say, Mr. President, can you help us find Dzamara? And these were some of the placards that were raised when Dzamara went missing. Until now, those placards are still hanging. Zimbabwe has refused to tackle issues on human rights violations. Speakers were adamant that they will protect Dzamara's legacy by continuing to fight for the values and the activists advocated. Until today, I am like urging Zimbabweans to continue to fight. We must broaden our horizon. We want a free Zimbabwe. This is why we want a free Zimbabwe. We want a free Africa. Africa should be free of these dictators. Africa should be free of these killers. Africa should be free of all these abductions. Itai had become more than an individual. Itai was not like an individual. He was someone who was fighting for the freedom of Africa. Someone who will be commemorated Africa as a whole. It is not about one man, ladies and gentlemen. It is about the legacy that Itai left for us. His family are still looking for Itai Dzamara. And when I was looking at the placards during that time, when people were commemorating each and every year to say, bring back Itai Dzamara, the family would go in front of government houses and cry. The wife would cry. The children would cry, where is our dad? We want our dad. Where is our dad? You will find that placards will be raised. Please bring back Itai Dzamara, dead or alive. His family is still calling for this new dispensation government to bring him back, whether dead or alive. What they want is closure of the matter. And the government refused to engage the family. And the family is demanding, engage us. Let us know where our father is. Muna haisi tsono inorasika munyika. Tsono yakadonha mujecha unoiwana wana. Because they had a whole person just to disappear. Kubva munyika. A whole person. The family even urged the government to set up a commission of inquiry and find out where Itai Dzamara went. Because what Itai Dzamara was fighting for was to make sure that Zimbabweans in 2018 will enjoy a free and fair elections. And that free and fair election should have been honored Itai Dzamara. Mgoma Brighton Sarwaga Zurudi. So you will find that until today, we are still criticizing the government. We are not going to rest until the whereabouts of Itai are known. We need to continue to ride to Emmerson Mnangagwa, to continue to ride to Constantino Chiwenga. Even if they ignore our letters, we should continue to write. We should never stop to demand Itai Dzamara. We must never stop to demand Itai Dzamara. You understand, ladies and gentlemen? This issue will hound the government forever. This issue will hound those people who abducted Itai Dzamara. These people who hound Zimbabwe. The government will be hounded. The abductors will be hounded. And the country will be hounded. So we need to escalate or put pressure on the government to say it's 7 years gone now. You haven't come back to us to tell us where Itai Dzamara is. And we are still waiting. Ated Ashley, Miambo, say. We are still waiting, ladies and gentlemen. Itai has got a family. Itai had a wife. Itai had children. What pains me most is the gentlemen they abducted had a family. The gentleman they met disappear had a wife. The gentleman they met disappear had 2 children. And it is now the responsibility of the government to take care of them. and the government hasn't been taking care of these children, of these people. It is supposed to be the government's responsibility to protect the people of Zimbabwe. And it failed to protect Itai. This is what pains me most. The government's duty is to protect its citizens. And the government failed to protect Itai Dzamara. This is what pains me most, ladies and gentlemen. Since Itai disappeared on the 9th of March 2015, we have exerted pressure on the Zimbabwe government. We have exerted pressure on the international platforms to say, look, the civil society groups, the churches, embassies and other actors are demanding the immediate release of Itai Dzamara. So we are saying, bring him dead or alive. We don't care. What we want is to see him, to put a closure to this issue. The government should address the abduction and forced disappearance of these human rights activists. Itai Dzamara is a symbol of struggle in Africa. Believe me, one day, you will find Itai Dzamara's statue in Egypt, Itai Dzamara's statue in Morocco, Itai Dzamara's statue in Chad, Itai Dzamara's statue in DRC. Everywhere in Africa, Itai Dzamara will be recognized. He's a symbol of struggle. Imagine, Itai Dzamara was out for a haircut when he was bundled out of the barber shop. He was bundled out of the barber shop in full view of every Zimbabwean. People were there. Takuda hedu guwa rake, tipei mabvupa ake tuige. Chete chendo zvatukukumbira. He was bundled out of the barber shop by some suspected state security agents. These were CIOs who bundled him out of the barber shop, took him, and the barber shop is not far from his home in Glenview. This came after Itai Dzamara delivered a very powerful speech to thousands of opposition supporters at a rally in Harare, in Highfields. He went to a rally in Highfields, the high-density suburb, and delivered a memorable speech, a very good speech, a very powerful speech that he delivered there. That was the last Itai was seen. Ngoma John Mapinda. He had launched the Occupy Africa Unity Square movement a year before his abduction. Often engaging in protests, mass sit-ins and street marches to demand an end to human rights violations and the resignation of former President Robert Gabriel Mugabe. After enduring repeated arrests and beatings, Dzamara was abducted by state security agents. For decades, the previous government used enforced disappearances to silence its critics. And Itai Dzamara's disappearance has also silenced the government critics. Several activists, ladies and gentlemen, among them, Justina Mkoko, 𝗳𝗺𝗶𝗵𝗃𝗄, Shadrach Manyere Saddam. You know, 𝗳𝗺𝗶𝗵𝗃𝗄 was just a 2-year-old baby. Just a 2-year-old baby who was made to disappear in 2008 and later released after relentless pressure from local and international human rights groups. We are talking of a Zimbabwe government, a ZANU-PF government, that abducted a 2-year-old baby. And speech. The government abducted a 2-year-old baby in 2008. This is when the likes of Justina Mkoko, Saddam Manyere were abducted also. Others who were abducted, 𝗕𝗁𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗃, Patrick Ndabanyama, remain missing since they were abducted and disappeared in 2012. We have got people still missing. 𝗕𝗁𝗃𝗀𝗃, Patrick Ndabanyama. These are some of the people who are still missing in our country. Zimbabwe, where someone goes missing, like a needle. Ladies and gentlemen, Zimbabwe lawyers, they've tried their level best. They've described even the abductions and holding people incommunicado and outdated, inhuman and untimely, ineffective practice that ruins the lives of innocent Zimbabweans. Honestly, this was what ZANU-PF was doing during the war. I still remember when I was serializing the death of 𝗁𝗵𝗃𝗄. Some of the issues that we had in that report were holding those gorillas incommunicado. That is an outdated way of intimidating people. It is an inhuman way and ultimately ineffective practice. Because if you see, when ZANU-PF started the violence, started abducting people, torturing people, killing people, that never pushed people away from demanding freedom. The more you kill, the more people will come. And the issue of Dzamara, it inspired a lot of Zimbabweans to say, okay, if they want to kill us, let them kill us all. Let's go and participate. And as we know, that even the Zimbabwe human rights lawyers, they tried to assist Dzamara's family with a legal representation, as the government should take all necessary and urgent measures to ascertain the whereabouts of Dzamara, Paul and Patrick Ndabanyama, among other disappeared and missing people in our country today. So what we are saying, the country's leading legal defense group called upon the government to fully investigate the circumstances surrounding the abduction of these 3 people. The abduction, and ensure that those responsible for their enforced disappearance are brought to account. Until today, new dispensation has been 5 years in power. They have ignored this. They can't talk about this. They can't talk about this. The government can't ratify, can't domesticate, and fully implement the requirements of United Nations conventions on the protection of all the people of Zimbabwe from enforced disappearance. This is why, last time I said, this government, certain elements in this government are on targeted sanctions. Because there is this United Nations Convention on the protection of all persons from enforced disappearance. The government should comply with that. And the United Nations Convention against torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, and its protocol. Failure of Zimbabwe government to enact these rights guaranteed rights. This earns them sanctions. Atete Kone, how are you? So the crisis in Zimbabwe coalition, what they said last time is it takes great exception of the government's apparent insincerity as far as the research of the missing activists is concerned. The safety and security of each and every citizen is a responsibility of the government, ladies and gentlemen. We therefore call for the government of Zimbabwe to account on his whereabouts. This is why you see today I am saying, let me discuss this issue about Itai Dzamara. I know I haven't discussed this issue before here, but today is the day Itai Dzamara was abducted, and the new dispensation just promised and nothing has happened. So I am reminding Zimbabwe government, the safety and security of each and every citizen in Zimbabwe is your responsibility. It's the government's responsibility. So I'm calling upon the government of Zimbabwe to account for the whereabouts of Itai Dzamara, Shizuze and Nabenyama. Their families are waiting for a disclosure. We just want these cases closed. Please tell us where you put Itai Dzamara. Those are two 𝗬𝗫𝗃𝗃. Those are two 𝗬𝗫𝗃𝗃. Highway codes, highway orders. Is everything okay? High court orders, ladies and gentlemen, were issued compelling the Zimbabwe Republic Police to search for the missing activists and give regular updates. His whereabouts remains a mystery, and updates have never been given by the law enforcement. They never gave us all the details required by High Court, the updates. Up to now, we haven't received anything. The complete disregard of the High Court order by the Zimbabwe Republic Police is a large concern, ladies and gentlemen. Anzina mkoma enwe muriritirwa, Itai knew about these mercenaries hired to kill Mugabe. In 2008, we informed him, and he was aware of who had hired the three Britons. It's a case of another day. Thank you so much. You understand? But why are they disregarding the High Court order? The Zimbabwe Republic Police is disregarding the High Court order. The High Court order said they should give us updates every time and then, so that we understand how far they've gone with the investigation of Itai Dzamara's disappearance. Because, ladies and gentlemen, failure to resolve the issue is a sign of an acceptable culture of impunity. The government must scale up Itai Dzamara's search. The government must scale up Ndabanyama's search, Chizuze's search. Because failure to resolve these issues will create an acceptable culture of impunity in our country, which needs to be addressed, ladies and gentlemen. Avanhu vari kurufawo pandabvira kuvafonera havasi kudaira foni. Regai ndingoda ndokufonera mai manje. Sorry guys, pane vanhu vari kunhamo kumba kukaroi, saka ndambotirai kuvafonera. No one was picking up. No one was picking up their phone. No one was picking up their phone. I'm Anzi na Baba 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃 regai ndivati Baba 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗏 vari kutenda zvikuru sa murume uyu uri kutenda zvikuru sa murume uyu uri kutenda zvikuru sa uri kutenda zvikuru sa. Taurai zvekukasika mukomana nhasi tine load shedding shame regai muteuro here wamuri kunwa ndiri kunwa muteuro atete handi muri kunzwa tiri kukosora wana covid vakapera nekuteura saka regai nditi gaga ndipedze because ndatanga early nhasi I've got a very serious thing that I need, so ndataura nhasi kuti let me talk about 𝗳𝗁𝗃𝗃 andimona, because there is an unacceptable culture of impunity in our country. The government is pretending as if it is a foolish government and is pretending as if they can't solve the disappearance of 𝗳𝗁𝗃𝗃 when they can actually do that. They can actually do that. So what is gravely worrying is their reluctance to solve the issue. The fact that Dzamara continues to be missing and unaccounted for 7 years after his abduction exposes government's insincerity in establishing his whereabouts. We want to know where 𝗳's whereabouts. We want to know where he is. If he is dead, please bring back his dead body. We want his dead body. 7 years now. And the people who abducted 𝗳𝗁𝗃𝗏 and probably killed him, they might all die before we know where they put 𝗳𝗁𝗃𝗏. So please, the government must up its game to try and bring or to try and tell us the whereabouts of 𝗳𝗁𝗃𝗏. You understand? This is why you see now the heads of mission, wana EU, wana Australia, wana Canada, wana Switzerland, wana United States said they welcome the repeated commitment by the Zimbabwe administration to fundamental human rights and freedoms, to national healing and reconciliation. But Dzamara's case remained an outstanding case. And when it remained an outstanding case, when the government is promoting this culture of impunity, ladies and gentlemen, be assured that targeted sanctions will not go anywhere. And let's praise the likes of 𝗁𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗏 𝗂𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗏, who was working for lawyers for human rights, who stood in solidarity with the Dzamara's family, friends. And he did his best to try and force the Zimbabwe Republic Police to investigate and bring back Dzamara to his loving Zimbabweans. Those Zimbabweans who were agonizing over the continued disappearance and the failure to account by state actors. We have got a government, a whole government, failing to account a whole human being. As I said, a human being is not a tsono, not a needle. Someone cannot go missing in a country where he was bundled outside, where he was bundled from a barber shop, where people were, and taken into a vehicle and driven away. Then the government, they will tell you that we can't find that person. 𝗳. And those people who abducted him, they did not think about it. They did not foresee that Dzamara's 2 children would want him. And these people were unidentified who abducted him. And they were traveling in an unmarked white Nissan hardboard. You know, Zimbabwe CIOs are very stupid. Every time they drive around, they use all these Nissan hard bodies, which easily identify them. And he was taken from a barber shop. Imagine where people were. He was taken in a movie style. So this is why I am saying that even today, we are still asking the whereabouts of 𝗲𝗄 𝗄𝗎. We are still asking the whereabouts of Patrick Nabanyama, who remain missing since 2012. 2000, the other one went missing 2000, and the other one went missing 2012. And we are still asking their whereabouts. Paul and Patrick, they stood for years and committed, they committed themselves to invest their lives in the freedom of our country. What they just did was a pursuit of freedom. And they were murdered or taken away or killed or disappeared because what they wanted is democracy, justice, and peace in our country, which we still demand. Democracy, justice, and peace in Zimbabwe. Musoro womwana watapiwa cha usati wambowanika. And they had a lot of information that would have seen half of Mugabe's cabinet arrested. So although the cry to bring Dzamara remains a national and a worldwide cause, it is saddening to note that while March 2021, High Court judges like Mangota issued in 2015 an order directing authorities to investigate, until now, that order has never been followed or pursued by the Zimbabwe Republic Police. They were given an order to establish Dzamara's whereabouts and update his family and lawyers. No meaningful progress, ladies and gentlemen, has ever been made to that. So this is why I take Joy Jones. How are you? So I take it upon myself to say today, let me raise this issue again. Because the Zimbabwe Human Rights, lawyers for human rights, they condemned the lack of progress made in the investigation. The human rights violations highlighted by the abduction and enforced disappearance of Ithai, Paul, and Patrick, and in punishing those responsible. So today, I said to myself, this is today marks 7 years after Ithai's disappearance. So those responsible for disappearance of Ithai, those responsible for disappearance of Paul and Patrick, they have committed heinous crimes under international law. And the ZANU-PF must know that ZANU-PF and its surrogates have committed heinous crimes under international law. Perpetrators of abduction and enforced disappearance must understand that abduction and holding people incommunicado is an outdated, inhuman, and ultimately ineffective practice, as I have earlier stated so. So what we want, ladies and gentlemen, we have got a new dispensation where its president is Emmerson Mnangagwa, who was vice president when Dzamara went missing. We have got Vice President Constantino Chiwenga, who was Army General when Dzamara went missing. So I am saying to them, you were in government and your failure to give regular updates on the search efforts of Dzamara, we take you as accountable. You are the perpetrators of this disappearance. This missing activist is your responsibility. So what we are saying is we are taking you to task to make sure that this is the 7th year and there is no progress on this matter. When are we going to get an update of Dzamara's missing? I'm Koma Yuda. How do you see Apostle Chiwenga concerning his prophecies about Zimbabwe? I don't buy Chiwenga's prophecies. Because I have got, it's very unfortunate, Sarah. Let's discuss that later after I finish this presentation. But my answer to you is, I don't buy his prophecies anyway. I just post quotes from where I find people sending me. I just post that, but I don't buy his prophecies. You understand? So Emmerson Damzo Mnangagwa is president of Zimbabwe, who was the vice president during Itai's disappearance. He personally announced on behalf of the Zimbabwe government that they were actively investigating the disappearance of Itai Dzamara. 3 months since his inauguration, he never said anything. Since his inauguration, Mnangagwa never said anything about investigating Dzamara. Dzamara's family and the world need to know that no one is being left, and no stone is being left unturned in the pursuit of justice for this gentleman. And I am reiterating the same feelings that the Dzamara family have, that the loving people of Zimbabwe have, that the loving world has. Itai Dzamara, he was a known critic of Robert Gabriel Mugabe. He publicly called Mugabe to step down or to resign for what he said his failure to manage the country's falling economy. If Itai Dzamara was still alive today, if he was still around with us, this gentleman would be seeing, the gentleman would be seeing that he has fought this and he still needs to fight. So the gap he created, it needs someone to fill in and continue to fight. Because 9 March 2015, abduction by unidentified people at a barber shop in Glenview, that should have never happened in that high density suburb. It's an area where a lot of people live. On Saturday, 7 March, before his abduction, he had addressed a rally in the capital of Harare where he called for mass action to address the deteriorating economic conditions in Zimbabwe. And the address was so powerful. It was held in Highfield. Witnesses who saw the abduction, they said his abductors handcuffed him and forced him into a white truck with concealed number plates before driving off. That was a clear abduction. Dzamara was well known to the authorities and had previously been abducted, unlawfully detained, and severely beaten by state security agents. So there was no doubt that Dzamara was abducted by the same people, the same security state agents. Yes, Mkomatafar. Because this is a requirement. He is now the president of Zimbabwe, Mnangagwa. Should be giving us update about the whereabouts of this gentleman. Zimbabwe has a long history of enforced disappearance of government critics and activists. Look, in 2008, dozens of opposition and human rights activists were forcibly disappeared for weeks. And human rights activists were they disappeared for weeks in a crackdown. When Mugabe lost, the state repeatedly denied its involvement, but many activists were later found in state custody and some were found dead, while the fate and whereabouts of others remain unknown. They have even denied abducting Vana Justina Mkoko. They have even denied abducting Daylight, Vana Joanna Mamombe. Police confirmed we have got Honorable Joanna in custody and later denied. So the whereabouts of other people are still unknown. A good example is 𝗕𝗁𝗄𝗃, abducted went missing in 2012. Up to now, Nobody knows where 𝗁𝗁𝗃𝗃 is. And people don't just vanish, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot just vanish into thin air. A whole human being like 𝗕𝗵𝗿 can't vanish into thin air. Someone out there knows what happened to Itai Dzamara. Someone out there knows what happened to Ndabenyama. Someone out there knows what happened to Paul Chizouze. And the time shall come, you are going to tell us, you are going to tell us where this gentleman went. Ndikagara ndinochema. Ndikafunga Itai Dzamara misodzi yangu inobuda. At one day ndakambomusendera message. He ignored it, he never replied me. Ndikati, Itai, you've done enough damage to Mugabe government. Now be very careful. These people might kill you. He never replied me. He never replied me. Ndopaunonzwa wamwe munhu achiti dzoka utaure izvozvo vachaabducta vanhu vachinouraya. Tine vanhu who are still missing in our country. Ndakanzwa tsitsi on the International Women's Day. Mukadzi waDzamara, he wept. She wept. Vana vaDzamara vaibvunza, Mom, where's dad? Where's our dad? Baba vedu varipi? Children were asking. And I could tell Itai Dzamara's wife weeping, crying. Since Itai Dzamara's forced disappearance, 𝗕𝗵𝗿 Dzamara has always had one International Women's Day wish, that the government empathize with the situation and bring back her husband. If you look at International Women's Day, always celebrated on the 8th of March every year, 𝗕𝗵𝗿, that day, is a no celebration day to Itai Dzamara's wife. She cannot commemorate, she only celebrate the day by commemorating the disappearance of, or forced disappearance of her husband the following day. As government ministers and officials mark International Women's Day with the festives and speeches across the country, none of them visit 𝗕𝗵𝗿 to find out or to sympathize or to understand her plight. This is a woman who is missing her husband. International Women's Day, it has become a very painful day for her. It is torturous to her. And that is the day she was supposed to be celebrating being a woman, commemorating being a woman. Now she will be looking into the forced disappearance of her husband, Itai Dzamara. Those who abducted Itai Dzamara, their husbands or their wives are celebrating this day, whilst 𝗕𝗵𝗿 cannot celebrate it. This is what pains me most. This is what pains every Zimbabwean most. These celebrations are held annually. Women's Day, International Women's Day. And when it is celebrated annually, then the following day will be Itai Dzamara's day. And the 𝗕𝗵𝗿, obvious, it will be a torturous day. She will start thinking about her husband. Why can't the government bring him back? She has no deal with the nagging of her two children, vana vake Nekutenda na Mnenyasha, who constantly ask her, where is our father? The children constantly ask the whereabouts of their father. They ask the mom, and the mother is always crying. On the 8th of March, a day she's supposed to celebrate with other women, the children will come and ask her about their father's whereabouts. They are always demanding answers. Itai Dzamara's children are always demanding answers. And what would 𝗕𝗵𝗿 tell the children? She now has gone 7 years without knowing where the husband is. What is she going to tell the children? And the government is silent on that matter. What would 𝗕𝗲𝗃 say to Nokutenda and Nyasha? This is something that should get into Mnangagwa's head. Mnangagwa should be asked, please tell us what you want 𝗕𝗲𝗃 to tell the kids who are crying and asking about their father's whereabouts. It's 7 years gone. There is no clue at all where Dzamara went. For years now, she has been hoping that Dzamara would one day return. Now, the hope of seeing him dead or alive is vanishing 7 years later, especially because the new government seems uninterested in prioritizing the case. They are not even interested. So these hopes of seeing Dzamara smiling again, returning to his children and his wife, hopes are vanishing 7 years later. And you understand that at first when the government has dismally failed to solve this, and this pains a lot. I imagine what she's going through today. Imagine what she went through yesterday. Itai's issue is no longer. Sorry guys, I think network actually happened. Saka, this is 8 o'clock. Let me just make this last presentation for few minutes, then I'll log off. Please tell Emmerson Mnangagwa, those who can forward this video to Emmerson Mnangagwa, to say, Mnangagwa, 𝗕𝗲𝗃 needs her husband back home. Can you do something? If you can't do something, then you cannot be president of a country. You need to protect citizens. Because imagine, Dzamara's children asking the mom, where is our dad? And the kids continue, or they'll ask on daily basis. Vana vakaenda pa next door, vanonzwa umwe mwana achiti baba, vachimhanyira baba vauya. Vana baba vachienda masweets every Friday kupa vana vavo. So these kids, they want their dad as well. Vanda kumhanyirawo baba vauya, baba vauya. 𝗕𝗲𝗃 said she has tried every avenue to get her husband back with no success. Ndo zvatiri kutaura kuti ndo vakauraya svika Eustace Mfanami. Dzamara's her wife has tried all the avenues she thought she hoped to get her husband back without success. She has resigned today, and she has been telling the kids that it's only God's will. It's only God who will fight for them. The truth will be revealed one day. And we have kept our ears open so that we can hear this truth one day. Mkoma promise msiwa, zviri kufamba here. Ndoba unonzwa rimwe gudo richiti pfe, richiti pamberi neZANU. When ZANU-PF does not feel for Dzamara's children, not Dzamara's children only. Unonzwa rimwe gudo richiti pfe, richibuda mumba mune zidhara rine mhasha. Richitadza, 𝗕𝗲𝗃 definitely needs all the help, ladies and gentlemen, we can get. It is the family that suffers most, and this family is suffering. The wife loses a husband. The children loses a father. Many times the breadwinner is taken away and the family has to survive on handouts. Just imagine Looking at the family today, it is surviving on handouts. Mnangagwa is now the president of Zimbabwe. He promised that he is going to solve the issue about Dzamara, and those promises were never fulfilled. Zimbabwe authorities are not even concerned about that. So what we are saying is the silence of this government, the silence of Emmerson Mnangagwa, since his inauguration as president of Zimbabwe, points to total lack of sincerity and indifference to the light of Dzamara's family. Ladies and gentlemen, Zimbabwe needs another government. Zimbabwe needs leadership change. Dzamara was abducted for protesting against Robert Mugabe's misrule. Dzamara was a pro-democrat who campaigned for freedom of every Zimbabwean. He was arrested on several occasions. He endured torture. He was once hospitalized and left nursing injuries, which is a clear indication that the government is responsible for his abduction. Despite being the forerunner in spreading truth to power the protests against Gabriel Robert Mugabe's rule, Dzamara was abducted and he disappeared on the 9th of March 2015, and he remains missing 7 years after. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm urging the people of Zimbabwe is something that we all need to embark on. Because, let me sum up what I've said. Today, the 9th of March 2022, marks 7 years after Dzamara was abducted. Dzamara was born on the 7th of August 1979. Mwana mudiki mupana cheche Itayo. Mwana mudiki Dzamara. Akanga ari mwana mudiki. Akazvarwa musi wa 7 August 1979. Ndingangoti to the nearest anenge achinzi akazvarwa 1980 mfano, when Zimbabwe gained independence. Dzamara's family, ladies and gentlemen, continue to suffer a general state of anguish, insecurity and fear. Dzamara was abducted on the 9th of March 2015. 7 years after the abduction, the family does not know about Dzamara's whereabouts. Dzamara would have been celebrating his 43rd birthday with his family this year, but Dzamara is no longer there. His lawyer or someone who was representing him in court, 𝗕𝗁𝗄𝗃, always talk about Dzamara's disappearance. He represented Dzamara in court, where 𝗕𝗺𝗃𝗃, ndakashanda naMangota ari magistrate parotono paipe. 𝗕𝗺𝗃𝗃 ordered ZRP neCIO to conduct a search of Dzamara and bring him back to his family. But nothing has been done. Dzamara is still missing as a result of this forced abduction by state agents, Zimbabwe government state agents. Up to now, the government hasn't given a satisfactory or convincing proof that would allow any reasonable person to determine that the allegations are not true. This is why we allege that the Zimbabwe government is the one that made 𝗳𝗵𝗶𝗿 disappear. Vana Makedenge knows about this. There is documentary evidence, ladies and gentlemen, to show that 𝗳𝗵𝗶𝗿 was kidnapped and disappeared in Zimbabwe. He was kidnapped in March, on the 9th of March 2015, and that act can be attributed either jointly or severally to the armed forces of Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe Republic Police, the Zimbabwe Central Intelligence Organization. The disappearance could be, or the disappearance attributed to these forces. Various witnesses anonymously produced evidence of how 𝗳𝗵𝗶𝗿 was kidnapped, imprisoned in clandestine jails and tortured. The police even have the number plate of one of the cars identified as used to abduct 𝗳𝗵𝗶𝗿 as ABG 2862. Investigations revealed that the vehicle registration belonged to 𝗂𝗵𝗿𝗀. 𝗂𝗵𝗿𝗀 was interviewed in presence. Even though his testimony seemed quashed, he told the police and produced some documents showing that he bought the vehicle right at the same period the car was identified in the abduction. The agreement of sale showed that 𝗂𝗵𝗿𝗀 had acquired the vehicle from the Zimbabwe Republic Police vehicle auction at Southampton Police, and it was previously owned by the police, which is a coincidence, which shows that 𝗳𝗵𝗶𝗿 was abducted by the state. So according to that evidence so far, the MO or modus operandi of how 𝗳𝗵𝗿 was abducted seems to have followed a well-known pattern on the practice of disappearance in Zimbabwe. They used a white twin cab motor vehicle and identified themselves as police officers, and that car was linked to the police. The kidnapping was selective. Furthermore, the testimony of the three witnesses who witnessed the abduction shows that 𝗳𝗵𝗿𝗀 was first placed under surveillance, then the kidnapped was planned. All the witnesses present at the barber shop where the abduction happened testified that before the abduction took place, they saw white double cab vehicles parked at all the street corners surrounding the barber shop. And so this was a well-planned abduction. It means a lot of people were involved in the killings. 𝗫𝗁𝗁𝗂. So photographic evidence and subsequent evidence in the police's possession confirmed the existence of secret jails and especially chosen places or clandestinely burning dead bodies. Images of 𝗳𝗵𝗿𝗀 blindfolded, with the hands tied behind his back, were sent to the Dzamara family. The images portrayed a subjection to cruelty and humiliating treatment and torture. The family verified the images of the photo and confirmed that it was indeed 𝗳𝗵𝗿𝗀. The evidence also showed that within the armed forces of Zimbabwe, there was a torture group and an interrogation group in this unit. In police communication written by Assistant Commissioner, Officer Commanding Law and Order, Mr. Makedenge, dated 24th September 2015, investigating information received, it was highlighted that 𝗳𝗵𝗿𝗀 was abducted by the above-mentioned people and taken to Bodagezi for 4 days, then moved to Goromonzi farm by Watson Marufu from Army KG6 after a meeting between the Army, police and CIO accusing each other. The information also said that 𝗳𝗵𝗿𝗀 was killed and buried at 𝗁𝗵𝗃𝗃 Prison Cemetery, grave number 71, exhumed, taken to a dam in Chitanda Farm, Mazoe Road. Chitanda Farm is where the CIO headquarters is being built. This is an account given by 𝗁𝗃𝗃𝗃 𝗂𝗵𝗵𝗂𝗃, who was a solicitor or a lawyer representing Dzamara. When queried by the family and the lawyers with executing a writ of habeas corpus filed in the High Court of Zimbabwe when Dzamara was abducted, the authorities systematically denied any knowledge of the detentions or the whereabouts of fate of Dzamara. Surprisingly, even after High Court ordered that the Zimbabwe Republic Police must give a report on their investigations in court, it took the police several months to comply, only to act when lawyers threatened contempt of court proceedings. This attitude by the Zimbabwe government is now new. In the past, they have refused the responsibility. The attitude is not new. In the past, they had refused the responsibility, even in the case of persons who later reappeared, those people who abducted 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗄, in the hands of the same authorities who had systematically denied holding them or knowing their fate. Takuvara ne load shedding pamzansi abatizwa izvo. Salute Captain. Thanks Jola. So the kidnapping of Dzamara was carried out in a broad daylight by men in civilian clothes who used a vehicle with the license plates. There can be no doubt that the government of Zimbabwe knows what happened to Dzamara. The Dzamara family have the right to know the whereabouts of Itai, and the government has an obligation to investigate and hold the perpetrators accountable. The mere subjection of an individual to prolonged isolation and deprivation of communication in itself is cruel and inhuman treatment which harms the psychological and moral integrity of the person and violates the right of every detainee to treatment respectively of his dignity. This account was given by Dzamara's lawyer, 𝗂𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. Ladies and gentlemen, considering everything that has been said, the Human Rights NGO Forum, it condemned the abduction of Dzamara, who was a leader of Occupy Africa Unity Square. According to Dzamara's lawyers, Mr. 𝗂𝗵𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 included, he was abducted coming out of a barber shop where he was having a haircut in Glenview, Harare, on the 9th of March 2015 by an unidentified man. Dzamara was a human rights activist who since October 2014 has been occupying Africa Unity Square, Harare, and led to protests demanding that Robert Mugabe steps down for failing to run the country. Dzamara and his co-protesters were assaulted, arrested on several occasions. Since his abduction that day, Dzamara's whereabouts were never known. This is a gross violation of constitutional guaranteed rights. The forum condemns the abduction as this is a reminiscent of 2008. Several human rights defenders were abducted and murdered. The forum called upon the abductors to release Dzamara or for him to be brought before the courts if he had committed any crime. That was human rights people writing to the forum. So the issue about Dzamara is something that has reminded me of the issue of George Floyd, who should be alive today. The Zimbabwe government cried when George Floyd was murdered. Zimbabwe government cried, and the Zimbabweans, including those in ZANU-PF, they cried when George Floyd was murdered. I said instead, many of them, ZANU-PF people, and us included, we witnessed George Floyd struggling to gasp for his last breath of air for more than 8 minutes, 8 agonizing minutes, under the knee of a police officer who took an oath to protect and serve. And I am thinking of Itai Dzamara, who was abducted and lost his life and disappeared under the police who took an oath to serve. The CIOs who took an oath to serve. The army which took an oath, the army officers who took an oath to serve. It remains hard to say. This was most painful for the people of Zimbabwe. It's surprising that the people of Zimbabwe would cry about George Floyd. They don't cry about Itai Dzamara. This is something that touches me. That the Zimbabwe government, the defense forces, the uniformed forces, have stripped Itai Dzamara's dignity, stripped him of his dignity and humility, as his life was horrifically strangled from him. In a similar manner, George Floyd was killed by these people. And to make the matters worse, those people who made Itai Dzamara disappear, they are watching me as I'm speaking right now. They are listening to me as I'm speaking right now. They weaponized their positions to make sure that they completely kill or destroy a defenseless human being. Itai Dzamara was not armed. Itai Dzamara had never been armed. His words were powerful. He was a completely defenseless human being who was never supposed to have been abducted in the first place. And to make matters worse, those people who made Itai Dzamara disappear, they are taunting the people of Zimbabwe for being powerless to stop them. The people of Zimbabwe, they are being taunted as useless people, people who are powerless to stop them from killing whoever they want. Ladies and gentlemen, no decent person with an empathy can taunt someone who has lost a husband, taunt someone who has lost a father. This is why we are saying the results of that impunity is what we are witnessing today. People being citizens of a country, being bajioned by ZANU-PF at a rally, being speared by ZANU-PF at a rally, and that the background of killings, that is a culture of killing adopted by ZANU-PF, is a culture that we have been speaking against every time and then. I have come live on Facebook on several occasions talking about all these killings. Ladies and gentlemen, Zimbabwe is a country that should be plunged into disarray. What I'm saying here is we must be seeing more street protests, because we have had enough of Zimbabwe government. And they're gonna kill you too, but they shall also die, and some of them are gone. Definitely. They are going to kill me. But what I'm saying is we have had enough of this. If it means we need to start with this street protest, definitely this is the time to do so. This is the right time to do so. We are now watching a fractured country, ladies and gentlemen. A nation battling for dignity, with the people battling to eat. We must wrestle this country from the hands of these killers. The consequences are that the likes of 𝗕𝗵𝗿 will be killed. But that does not stop you from continuing to demand freedom. Anzi namkoma Deft Zondi, you were at 𝗁𝗶 and how was the welfare of the prisoners? I believe it was not fair and there's nothing changed from then. Totally nothing changed. Prisoners had no clothes, had no blankets, had no food, had no water, no electricity. No blankets, no food, no water, no electricity. So, prisoners were suffering. And nothing has so far changed from their suffering. You 𝗲𝗲𝗃𝗃 mega, guys. But its inception, it's since ZANU-PF inception, the people of Zimbabwe have never enjoyed their civil rights. The people of Zimbabwe have never enjoyed freedom. The people of Zimbabwe have lived under aggressive political party, under aggressive government. The government does not bother, is not bothered at all. Even if women are killed, children are killed. At one time, Mugabe's government abducted a 2-year-old boy. ZANU-PF abducted a 2-year-old boy. And that type of our brutality is what we call outright police brutality. Why would the war president, an 80, 90-year-old president, abduct a 2-year-old boy who does not even know what politics is? Ladies and gentlemen, that legacy left by Robert Mugabe, which is the legacy being continued by the second dispensation of Chiwenga and Mnangagwa, this must be condemned outright, because what they are stealing is your freedom. What they are stealing is your vote. And that should never continue to be like that. Black men and black people of Zimbabwe, your lives matter as well. Black life cannot matter in America alone. Black life cannot matter in Britain alone. Black lives matters. Black life matters even in our country, Zimbabwe. When a black man is killed by a black man in Zimbabwe, there are no protests. When a black man is killed by a white man in America, then Zimbabweans will protest in Zimbabwe. They will go to American embassy and protest at the American embassy. But when Dzamara disappears, no one protested Zimbabwe governments. When 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 is murdered on the daylight, no one goes to the police and protests. No one goes to government offices and protests. So do you mean that George Floyd's life is far much better than 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃's life? We are not doing we are doing a disservice to our country. Because when George Floyd's life matter, 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃's life matter as well. Dzamara's life matter as well. These are human beings whose lives matter. And all other people who were murdered by ZANU-PF or who were unfairly deprived of their lives and dreams by ZANU-PF, their lives matter as well. So what happened in America or what happened in Britain, if it happens in Zimbabwe, it must be treated the same. We must be seeing people protesting. We must be seeing placards written in a similar way we did when George Floyd was murdered. Because those memories, they seemingly live with us forever. Never-ending memories have been living with us forever. So what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, those who murdered the likes of Dzamara, they did it at a so blatant and savage way. What has been explained by 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, that's savage. We don't expect that to happen. Where children witnessed Itai being taken away for slaughter. That should never happen in our country. That is what is surprising me. They've got money to send abductors to pay people to go murder people. But the Zimbabwe government does not have money for food. They can't feed those people. Locked people in the houses during pandemic without anything to eat, no water to drink. But today, they can't even give food to the people. They've got money to buy fuel, money to send killers to go abduct and kill people. But they've got no money to feed those people. The government is not even committed to see peace in our country. They call themselves anti-racists because one single person was murdered in America by whites. Zimbabwe government is murdering 10 to 15 people on a daily basis. But not one person has ever protested against these killings. They go demand racial equality in America. They don't demand human rights equality in our country. So this is high time, ladies and gentlemen. We should put in place measures that can see us success. Let's position ourselves. Let's prepare ourselves to box the idiots. Because there is no time we are going to rise up if we don't do it now. The choice is yours. There is nowhere we can be financially stable or we can do careers that reward in our country. The opportunity is zero until we remove these killers. They have spilled a lot of blood. Once you are in government and start spilling blood, God will condemn you. ZANU-PF is a political party that was condemned by ZANU-PF, by God. And God has condemned ZANU-PF government. This is why you see they spill blood. God is the only person who should be spilling blood, not a person who was born out of a woman. So the cumulative effects of all these killings are punishment from God. But we must not just stand and say, God will come and help us. God is looking at us to achieve something. God is looking at us to deal with this case, to deal with the ZANU-PF decisively. If we don't do it now, there is nothing. Don't expect anyone to come to us to help us to say, we are going to free you from ZANU-PF. Ladies and gentlemen, let me call it quits. I've done quite a lot of presentation here. I was talking about Dzamara tonight. As I've got crucial meeting tomorrow, I need to do a little bit of reading before I go. I've been sent some things by Baba 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃. Vari kutenda zvikuru. Dai ndaibvumirwa kutaura vanhu vari kuita basa irori. But kune vanhu vatisingakwanisi kutaura panapa who are doing a great job.
Saka madhona ndati batsirwa ramba chiya t-shirt yemsangano anditika ya iti kana pa uro doti muchizata iwa zvakaita zvakabhadhara awaita iwa akakora charabatwa support aidondwa noti nyaya iripo hunde huru yekuti muite rigari kuti musangano ndi uzikane hunge kuti ipfeka rigari so aisiye kuisa mupiro Tauka. Rambe makadzipfeka kana kwaunoenda kudhipi ukaipfeka. Kana kwaunoenda kwamagwinya kukaenda.
Ndi baba Goldfish Dau ari kutaura nevanhu vavo.
Pote muchipfeka masikipa iwayandika. So ndina kuti dai rambe makadaro. Thank you very much.
Ndi baba Godi.
Ngai.
Ndi baba Madzibaba Neshanduko.
Yeah. So I wapana pachandaitira joti imi munogara muri pashero panapa pamashops mugara makapfeka chi mainform iwayo kuitira kuti rigari iyi inokosha skipa iyi inokosha ikatosida iwache chazama kuti vanenge vani ukaiwacha ava makomera tikarembera ona matipawo yero iyi toshuira kuti angari yero ine logo ya president tarambo taona malogo ya president yari yero ona tangopfeka yero yese sai yero ine logo ya president kunge zvaita ava vachena ava ndichangoti pane ndifambawo ndichamborokozawo ndichiya nawo because edu anokosha haigoti haifambidzana nenguva rambai makasvika pane pabusiness center ka rambai makadi yes. Thank you very much.
Ndo mabasa ari kubatwa nababa Godfrey Chidau ari kubatira mabasa anokosha anziko muparliament yeZimbabwe ndanda kupedza.
Is he aware that at the ZANU-PF rally on February 26th, Vice President 𝗬𝗃𝗃 said of the opposition Citizens Coalition for Change, "You see how we crush lice. You make it on a flat stone and then flatten it to the extent that even flies will not make a meal of it. That is what we are going to do to the CCC." The following day, a CCC rally was attacked with iron bars, machetes and spears. One opposition supporter was killed and many more hospitalized. Will the government condemn the Vice President's violent incitement and work with the international community to hold the Zimbabwean government accountable for the safety and security of all Zimbabweans who should have the right to freely elect their leaders without fear of violence or intimidation?
My Lord, I'd like to thank the noble Lord, and I agree that such language inciting political violence has no place in any country, including Zimbabwe. We urge the government of Zimbabwe to live up to their constitution in ensuring that all political parties are allowed to operate and campaign without harassment. As our ambassador publicly stated after the death of the CCC supporter at the rally of the 27th of February, we urge the police to fully investigate any acts of political violence and bring the perpetrators to justice.
I think I've got to go and make a presentation to Westminster. Ndakamboendako sometimes. I think I need to go there as well. Kuti zvifambe. Because panapa ndikutarisawo message yabva kumusha anziko nasikana
bafaraita voice note because kunoku network ikunetsa isa voice note ndototi titonzwana nawe uchitaura ndichitaura kana ndizotaura namama to vanongoisa voice note because network kuno Zimbabwe yakadhakwa kubva mutwe wakaenda vanhu kubulawayo usiku network yakabva yadhakiswa kuti titori pamahwani. Ndachifona kuti ndibate maoko kuna mai. Saka ndaida kuziva kuti ambuya vari kuigwa rini, maviga here kana kuti muri kuigwa rini, because hapana information. I've been trying to call you guys, I couldn't get through, and there was no communication from there. Saka ndaida ngubata maoko chete ndozvanachikufonera, but hapana chandiri kuona chiri kufamba. Thanks for the voice note. Sorry guys, let me log off. Ndimboita zvinhu izvozvi ndizive kuti mbuya vavigwa here, because hapana communication yandiri kuwana from home. Saka let me talk to you tomorrow after this crucial event. Good night.